Throughout the centuries, there have been many ways to describe what it means to be human. Some philosophers have pointed to the human mind with its capacity for critical thinking as the essence of our humanity. And so Aristotle defined humanity as the rational animal. Apparently not met some of us. Plato gave Socrates' definition of what it means to be a human being as a featherless biped. Well, upon hearing this, a fellow resident of Athens, Diogenes the Cynic, presented Plato with a chicken that he had plucked and said, "Behold, your man." Well, from that moment on, they slightly altered Plato's definition, and we became a featherless biped with broad, flat nails. Others speak of the human capacity for self-transcendence as the essence of what it means to be a human creature. That is, we can step out of ourselves and then observe ourselves and see our situation and the challenges and opportunities we face in life. Think about death. They say that animals die, but what distinguishes the human creature is that we know we must die. We can step out of ourselves. Others talk about certain human traits and physical identities and capacities. 10 years ago, the scientists completed the remarkable task of identifying the sequence of our DNA structure in the Human Genome Project and revealed just how much we have in common with the other animals. Even certain primates share our capacity for reasoning, language skills, opposable thumb, and the ability to use tools. But are we nothing more than a complex structure, arrangement of DNA? I think we are. Still others describe the distinctly human trait as a moral conscience, a soul, an ability to build loving relationships. The Bible speaks of our being created in the image of God, our being created so that we might have a unique relationship with God. And so when we contemplate what it means to be human, perhaps it is best for our purposes today to simply think about what does it mean to live a fully human life. And so we turn to our scriptures for today, the arrest and the trial of Jesus. What? At first glance, you may think that these scriptures have nothing to do with the topic at hand, and yet I tell you, this story of an intensely painful time in the life of Jesus and the reactions of everyone around him show us both the threats and the possibilities of what it means to live a fully human life. It's a story crammed full of people, chock full of people. Everyone from every dimension of the city of Jerusalem is there. And imagine them splayed out on a stage here. It is a crowded stage with scribes and chief priests and the high priests and temple guards and witnesses and bystanders and the whole Sanhedrin and disciples and criminals and the Roman governor and the Roman soldiers and the bloodthirsty crowd. And oh yes, Jesus too, standing among them. So I like to scan the crowd and think about where do I see some elements of our common humanity, what it means to be a human creature. I see before me the temple guards, the chief priests, the high priests, the elders, the religious elite of the city of Jerusalem. These good religious people are so certain that they are right, so sure of their convictions, so determined in their theological notions, so convinced that they know the mind of God, that they are willing to do anything they can to prevail over Jesus and bring him to trial and death. They hold their convictions with passion, but without humility. They become self-righteous and arrogant. They distort the truth. They even welcome false witnesses, these good religious people, to accomplish their goals. And they become the very evil they despise, and they do not even see it. We see these same good religious people in our world today and in our own society. They're condemning and intolerant of any understanding of the truth but their own. There are fanatics in every faith tradition, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Jewish, and so forth. There are people in our own culture who are unwilling to discuss moral and social ideas in a civil way, respecting the opinions of others. It's just much too easy to demonize and dismiss those who disagree with us. But a part of what it means to be a fully human being, to be a Christian in the Reformed tradition, is to be passionately committed to the God we know in Jesus Christ, but also to understand the limitations of our own knowledge and the finite mind, and to realize that God is so much bigger than we can ever imagine, and therefore God may be speaking to us in ways that are different from our own ways, and voices that are not our own voices, and through people who are people we do not even know. For our understanding of the truth is always incomplete and partial, and therefore we listen to God speaking to us through others, even those with whom we disagree. To be fully human, to be passionately committed to God, but be open to the voice of God speaking through others. I wonder what would have happened if the religious establishment on that day in Jerusalem had actually let go of some of their passion and some of their convictions and simply listened to Jesus. Would the outcome have been different? For narrow-minded, self-righteous, and tolerant religion, rather than enhancing our lives, diminishes our lives and keeps us from being fully human. Oh, but there are others in the crowd, not just the religious leaders. I see crowds of people who are easily swayed by their emotions. Instead of uniting the mind and the heart together in the pursuit of truth, they let the mob mentality take over and run their lives, destroy their capacity to think. Instead of acting out of compassion for a fellow human being, the thirst for blood is upon their lips, and they will not be turned aside until they see blood. And the leaders of the people have whipped up the crowd into a fevered pitch. I doubt if all the atrocities that have happened throughout human history could have ever happened unless someone or some evil force had not manipulated people into losing their humanity. I tell you, it's just not right to kill others in the name of God. I don't know who ever came up with that idea. Butchering others in the name of God, tribe, race, religion happens when we lose our balance between reason and emotion. In the last 2 centuries, genocides have occurred all across this planet, wherever human creatures have failed to stand up against ethnic hatred. In countries like Rwanda, the Sudan, Cambodia, Germany, Poland, Russia, and even in the Americas, as we have destroyed the native populations. Oh, when we as a human creature fall into our fear, our suspicion, our greed, our jealousy, our envy, our hatred, we lose our humanity. We become something less than God created us to be, something ugly and vicious. We become like the crowd crying, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" And even Peter loses something of his true humanity when he stands warming himself by the fire in the courtyard of the home of the high priest. He wants to be close to Jesus, but not so close as to get burned. He wants to know what is going to happen to Jesus, but he's afraid to speak, and so he is silent there, hiding in the shadows, being illuminated only as he seeks warmth by the glow of the fire. And when the servant girl recognizes him by his voice and dress and manners as one of the Galileans, Peter denies knowing Jesus not once, but 3 times. And then that darn rooster crows. I've heard it crow. Have you? I've heard the rooster crow. And when Peter hears the rooster crow, he breaks down and he weeps. His betrayal of Jesus breaks his own heart, for he has become something he did not want to be. Winston Churchill said that courage is what it takes to stand up and speak, but courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. I would reverse that in Peter's case. Peter had plenty of courage to sit down and listen to Jesus when he taught about the kingdom of God, when he followed him on the road from Galilee to Jerusalem. But when it came time to stand up and speak, he lost his nerve. He fell into fear. We cannot be fully human when we live our lives out of fear. There have been times in my own life when I have failed to speak, when I have known that something is wrong, and I can touch those moments in my life like a painful wound. I was afraid. I suspect some of you may know that feeling as well. It happens to all of us. We are silent when we see someone bullying another. We keep quiet in the face of injustice. We go along with hateful speech. We do not stand up for what we believe. We ignore evil and pretend like it's just not there. We do nothing. And a part of what it means to be truly human dies within. Crucify him, the crowds cried. But there's still others left on that stage, that crowded stage. The governing authorities, the political leaders, the keepers of the peace, they like the center stage. And so when the high priest falsely accuses Jesus of blasphemy, he hands him over to Pilate so that Pilate will do his dirty work for him. But the high priest knows that the Romans could care less about the finer points of Jewish theology. And so he tells them that Jesus has claimed to be the king of the Jews. And Pilate knows to keep the peace there can only be one king, the emperor in Rome. And the tragedy of the story, the tragedy of our humanity, the tragedy is that Pilate knows that the charges are false. He knows that Jesus has done nothing to deserve execution. He even tries to get out of it, to right the wrong. He even tries to get this frenzied crowd to get him to release Jesus. But no, instead they want the murderer Barabbas. Pilate, the representative of Roman justice, caves into the demands of the crowd and hands Jesus over to be crucified. It is a bad business when leaders, civic and governmental, religious, what have you leaders, when leaders rule by public opinion instead of doing what is right. It is a bad business when we're more concerned about our position or our seat in the legislature or keeping our constituents or our flock happy than doing justice. But when courage fails, injustice prevails, and to do the right thing, no matter what the cost, is a part of what it means to be fully human. This is what Jesus does, the last figure to be standing on our stage. What does it mean to be fully human? It is Jesus who shows us our true humanity. For we say that he is not only fully divine, the Son of God, he is also fully human before God. We see in him what it means to be created in the image of God, to live in a perfect relationship with God. For standing before his accusers, he is unafraid. Taken captive, he is free. Beaten by soldiers, he is faithful to the end. Led off to be crucified, he puts his life and his death in God's hands. Rejected by the crowds, he refuses to hate. Paul Achtemeier once said that the Gospel of Mark presents Jesus as the one who shatters the illusion of Roman justice and shatters the illusion of Jewish righteousness. And in him we see what true justice and true righteousness are. I don't know about you, but so often when I read the Gospels, I find myself identifying with the bumbling, fearful, uncomprehending disciples. I see myself in the sinners who come to be forgiven, the outcasts who want to be loved and a place to belong. I see myself in the religious folk who get it wrong and cannot see it for themselves. I see myself in the community leaders who will do anything to stay on top of the heap. The powerful who refuse to do the right thing. I see myself in the confused who long to sit at the feet of Jesus and hear His words and understand His truth. I am all of these things. I suspect you are as well. But I tell you, we are more than this. We are more than this. For if we want to see ourselves clearly and know what it is to be fully human, then we must look at the last one standing on the stage. And remember that the Gospels were written not so much that we might identify ourselves with all those characters who represent our fallen humanity, but that we might identify ourselves with Jesus, who represents our true humanity, that we may find our life in Him. What does it mean to be human? It means to live like Jesus. Amen.